party animals. They need to go to the war and fight. Your son died for oil. He died to make George Bush's friends rich, to expand U.S. imperialism in the Middle East.
Right.
You stand behind all that, Cindy?
I stand behind everything that I've said. You know, when you look at the definition of terrorism, the Army's definition is spreading violence to enforce an ideology on another people. We're enforcing our ideology on the people of Iraq. If you look at some studies, they say 700,000 people have been killed in Iraq. 3,000 of our soldiers so far.
But are you saying America is a terrorist nation?
I'm saying
you're saying George Bush is a terrorist.
And I'm saying George Bush as a terrorist is someone who kills innocent men, women, and children. And we have killed many innocent men, women, and children.
Well, there's also the bigger concept of war and combating evil. And, you know, you and I are not going to agree on the war in Iraq, and I don't think there's any point in discussing that, but there's also an issue of defending your country and defending liberty and freedom. We've had to beat back fascism, Nazism, totalitarianism, Imperial Japan, and now we have terrorism. And it's a very complicated war to fight.
Why are we in Iraq?
Because of the war?
Iraq was no threat to the United States of America. Saddam, first of all, was our buddy.
It was a threat to the world.
Was our buddy for a long time, and then after the first Gulf War, he was decimated. Then 12 years of sanctions, and that country was decimated. But I want to talk about one other thing that I said that I do regret. I do regret calling George Bush a bastard. You know, but it was shortly after my son was killed. I was very angry, and I said it out of anger.
Is there anything else
of
all these other things, do you regret anything else that you've said?
Well, I really believe that there's only one kind of a just war, and that's a war that you would send your own children to die for.
Well,
and if George Bush believes in this war so much, why aren't his daughters over there?
Because we have an all-volunteer army right now, and we don't need, according to all the military experts, we don't need it. But I want to get onto one point. You came to fame when you went to Crawford and you were standing outside the ranch, or sitting or standing, whatever you're doing at different points, and you wanted to meet with the president. The press was down there in huge numbers. You remember those days well. Mm-hmm. The fact is, you did meet George W. Bush.
Right.
And the fact is when you first met him, you said, after you met him, you said, I know he's sincere about wanting freedom for the Iraqis. I know he's sorry. I know he feels pain for our loss. I know he's a man of faith. He said this was 11 weeks after your son died. He said that was the greatest gift the president gave us. He gave us the gift of happiness, the gift of being together.
The greatest gift the president gave us was that was the first time that my family was alone together since Casey died, and we went to Seattle and we had a wonderful time together. That was the gift, that we got to get away from everything, get away from home, get away from all the visitors that really, I'm not complaining we had visitors because they sustained us through this loss, but we got to go away.
As you're using this,
but I also said that we were questioning the reason that Casey was dead, and after that was exposed that I had changed, flip-flopped or something, the editor of our newspaper said, no, Cindy didn't flip-flop. They were already questioning the reasons for the war, and her philosophy has just
But those were very
matured.
complimentary words that you used. Look, you have every reason, I guess, to change your opinion, but certainly when you use those terms, lying bastard, biggest terrorist in the world, worse than bin Laden, et cetera, compared him to a Fuhrer, you really didn't expect George W. Bush to sit down with you at that point.
You know, I didn't really say George Bush was a Fuhrer. I said John Warner marched in lockstep.
Okay, pretty close.
Please.
To his Fuhrer.
Please
you
don't
used the words
say that.
Well, you marched in lockstep to his Fuhrer.
Okay.
So you're basically saying the president's a Nazi.
If I said that, that was a long time ago.
And you apologize for
that? You know, I don't think that calling names is
see, because that's a point.
But I don't think calling names is effective, and it's not my style anymore. It used to be, but it's not anymore. You know, I'm trying to mature my activism. I'm trying to mature my rhetoric to still be confrontational, but not calling names. I was very, very angry back in those days.
You were at a speech with Hugo Chavez, and Hugo Chavez, with you standing next to him, said, "Down with the U.S. empire." You further went on in an interview, you said you admire Hugo Chavez and you'd rather live under Hugo Chavez than George W. Bush.
Yeah, but I should have said I'd rather have a lot of other people for my president than George Bush, not just Hugo Chavez.
Do you regret sitting there as a dictator says down with your country?
George Bush, I mean, Hugo Chavez isn't a dictator. He's
Yes,
been
he is a
democratically
dictator.
elected 9 times.
Well, yes and no. He also shut down his opposition press just recently, and he has attacked this country relentlessly. And he said, "Down with the U.S. empire."
I'm
right in front of you. You sat there right next to him, and you didn't correct him. You said, "No, I'd rather live under him."
Right. I'd rather have him as a president than George Bush. Not under him. I want to be in the United States with a different president.
Considering all these words you used to describe George Bush, what words would you use to describe Osama bin Laden?
I would say that he's wrong, too. I don't like him killing us.
They didn't call him a lying bastard.
I haven't heard any lies that he said. But I'd say he's wrong for killing us.
People and was responsible for other terror acts.
That's horrible. That's horrible. I mourn those people's deaths, as I mourn innocent Israeli deaths and innocent Palestinian deaths and innocent Iraqi deaths. And every single American that has died cuts a hole. It tears my heart open again, but there's innocent babies in Iraq being killed.
If we capture bin Laden, do you believe he would deserve to be executed?
I believe that he would deserve to be punished. I don't believe in the death penalty. I believe George Bush and his administration are guilty of crimes against humanity, and I wouldn't call for their executions either.
Do you believe the Iraqi people, you don't think they were right to execute Saddam? We have all these images of babies, women, children. 40 Kurdish villages were hit with chemical attacks by Saddam. We have how many mass graves do we find? Hundreds of thousands of executed Iraqis.
We hit Fallujah with chemical weapons, and I'm still not calling for the execution of George Bush.
Cindy.
I think, Sean, violence begets violence.
And coming up, I debate illegal immigration with a former advisor to Mexican President Vicente Fox and